Final Generation Ministry here. If you're new to the channel, we'd like to say welcome and thanks for joining us today. I'd like to introduce you to our new segment called Friday Testimony, and where we give an opportunity to our friends and viewers, just like you, to be able to give a testimony on what God has done for their life and what God continues to do, and any blessings that they want to mention and how their walk is doing with Jesus at this time. I'd like to introduce you to Lorna. She's one of our senior viewers, and she's going to enlighten us on her experience and what God has done in her life. And we've separated her testimony with all the great stories she has into 4 chapters. And I pray you are blessed by her testimony.
Hello for everyone, wherever you are in the world, and this video are reaching you. I just want to let you know that this is not something easy for me to do. And normally I would not do this because I'm not a person that really get involved with the media, and I don't like to really show myself too much. But I've been impressed to do this video because it's not about me. It's all about God and what He can do in your life and what He has done in my life. So I want you to do me a favor, and the favor is not to focus too much on my life, even though it's about my life. But I want you to focus more on what God has done and how God can change your life. And it doesn't matter where you are in this world or what your situation is. Once you open your heart to God, once you leave a little tiny room, He doesn't want a big room, just a little room, He will come in and He will change your life forever. So I will start with my life in the Caribbean. I am the last child of 5 children. I have 2 older sisters, 2 brothers, and I'm the last. My parents, I must let you know, they were Methodists. Very, 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 what should I say, not strong Methodists. They were, the whole family, all the generations were Methodists. They were the cardinals, or priests as they would call it, or pastors as they would call it. So they were very well known for that. But my parents came into the message, so I was born, we want to say born into the message. When I was born, my parents were Seventh-day Adventists, because a neighbor not too far away, his name was Mr. Walker. He's not alive today, but his name is Mr. Walker. And he came and shared the Sabbath with my mother and my father. And so when they heard the message, they did not, my mother didn't want to tell my father because my mother was concerned that he would be upset because, she would have to leave the Methodist faith and come to be a Seventh-day Adventist. My father was concerned. He didn't want to tell my mother because for the same reason. This is what they told me. And so when they found out that both of them were convicted by the Holy Spirit, that Saturday was the Sabbath, they decided to become Seventh-day Adventists. But it was very hard for them. As I said to you, all their family members who had position in the Methodist Church, everybody knew them as Methodists. That's all. So when I was born, I should say, in the Adventist faith. But I will start my journey here with you at the age of 19. So I grew up as a child in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but I will tell you, I really didn't know God. I have to confess, because this is a testimony of truth. I did not know God, because I just grew up and went to Sabbath school, and someone came and just, as kids, they just sang songs with us and teach us Bible stories, but I didn't have a Bible at that time. I didn't have a personal Bible. So but I'll tell you, I did not know God. So anyhow, at the age of 19, I went to a school which is not a high school, it's after high school, there's an in-between school before you go to university. And I met someone there, and he was a bit older than I was. And at the age of 19, I was naive because I said I grew up in a Seventh Adventist home, and I grew up in a sort of rural neighborhood. It was not a city, and so it's a small community, and so I was not exposed to much like life as such. But anyhow, he told me that he loved me, and being a 19-year-old girl and somebody told me that they love you, especially somebody like him, because he was very educated. He was known for his education, and he was a writer, a poet, and even England gave him an award as a young boy for writing poems. And that was a big thing, that to have England give you in the Caribbean a prize for writing poetry. This is something that people look up to. So anyhow, that's how what happened. And then my parents, he went to my parents to tell my parents he was interested in me and he wanted to marry me. But my parents was not for it. Well, I'm not sure if my parents for it, but I know my sister, older sister, was definitely not for it. So anyhow, that's what happened at that time. And so we ended up getting married because my parents were very hard on me and him. And in a way, they pushed us away because other family members were telling me after that they told him, you left her no choice because she wanted someone to talk with her. She's a young girl. She never had any boyfriend before. She doesn't even know what it is to love. And so, you have to talk with her. And she's trying to find herself at the age of 19. But my older sister, for reasons that I found out later, I didn't know at the time, was very opposed to it because of her personal interest that I wouldn't go into now. And so anyhow, they were behind us and follow us everywhere we go. And so when he happened to get married, I felt I had no way out because I figured if I go back, I would just be in trouble with them. So I figured I better get married to him because that's a way for them to stop coming after us. So I did, got married at the age of 19. And of course, as I said to you before, he was a few years older than I am. And so from that journey, I was kind of separated from my parents because my brothers and my sister, the older one, and they listened to her, came after us with a vengeance. So we decided to go to America. So we left Trinidad, didn't plan to go overseas, but we ended up going to overseas because we wanted to get out of there. Because a small country, a small town, where do you go? So anyhow, we went to America, and we went there as, what you call it? We call it visitor's visa, because we didn't have time to plan to get permanent papers and all that. So a family member that my husband had tell us we could come up there, and they wrote a letter that said you can come, so we had a visitor's visa. So we went to America, and I didn't know anybody there because I had no family there, but he had some extended relatives in America, so we went to America. And so that's another journey of my life, is being in America. And as we were there, we had some family members who took us in, and we were staying with them for a little while. But then we could not stay there any longer because they had some young men there who were interested in me, my age, and some of them a couple older than I was, and they were interested in me. And I showed not to show interest in them because I grew up to know I must be loyal to whoever I'm married to. So I told them no, when they make advances against me, I told them no. And when I did that, we had to leave the place that we live in. We had to leave the area. But of course, I did tell them what had happened, but they took the side of their own family members, the men, and so they didn't believe us, and so we had to leave the place. And as we left there, we had nowhere to go because we were new there, and also we were on visitor's visa, so you can't really work when you have no permanent papers. So we left there and we were looking for a place. And at that time, I was pregnant with a baby, but at least she was born, my second daughter. So she was a little baby. So we took her as a baby and we went looking for a place to live. And it was very, very difficult because we didn't have anybody there except these cousins that my husband had that we were living with. So we went looking for a place, and of course we couldn't get no place of any wood because we didn't have a job, we didn't have papers, so we only could go in certain areas to live, like ghettos, they call them ghettos. So there's always someone in your life who is good. A friend of the family, I guess he didn't like what they did, so he came with us and he was looking with us in the city of Detroit. And he was, because that's where places were cheap at the time, very cheap. And so he went with us and we found a small little place area, which we were grateful for because at least you have a place to go. So I had my daughter, first daughter, and my second daughter was a baby. My daughter was about 2 years old, and maybe 2.5. And then my daughter was a baby. And so we got a place. It was $50 a month. So that was good because we couldn't afford anything more anyway. So we got that place and we're very grateful, for the place that we got. And I should go back up a bit to let you know the day we land in America was the day that apparently Martin Luther was killed, and they had a whole lot of rioting at that time. Remember, we were on the bus and we wondered why people were attacking the bus. But remember, I came from a small town in the Caribbean, so I wasn't used to this kind of picketing or violence or anything. And they start hitting the bus. So that is my first introduction to America, is people attacking the bus because I guess they were angry over that. And so that's my introduction to America. And so from there now, thank be to God that even in the worst time, God was there for us. So even though I was not with God anymore, I didn't know God, as I mentioned before, I didn't really know God. I just grew up going to church, Sabbath school, they talk about what Sabbath school stories, children's stories, they sing a song, but I really didn't know. I must mention too, I got baptized at the age of 12. And I'll tell you something, I did not know what baptism meant. And it was like a ritual. They took a lot of kids, my age, 12 years, and they baptized us without us knowing any doctrines of what we're doing. It's only later in life, as I will tell in my other testimonies, that I really got to know God and what baptism was. So it was just a ritual, I realized looking back at it. So anyhow, as I said, we were in Detroit at that time. And thank God that even though my husband was a student, was another story, he was a visitor, he was able to get, because he was very bright, I told you when he was very bright, he got an award from England and he was very bright, educated. So he got someone, and we don't know up to this day who it was, someone see his ability, and they never told us who it was, and paid for him to go to university. Imagine that. We don't know to this day who did it. Nobody will tell us. I know that the university usually have scholarship for people, and people donate money to help people that they figure are bright students. So he got it, and that was a big break for us. And to pause is to let you know that even in the most difficult time, God always sends somebody to help and make a difference. So he got a scholarship, and with the scholarship, he was able to get a student work, because as a student, summertime they will give you work. So he was working, but he couldn't work during the week. He could only work on summertime, just summertime job. So we had to make do with whatever little he got to mind the 2 children, and myself and my husband, my 2 kids. So that's the journey. And I look back and I realize that God has been with us all the way, even through all the difficult times in our life. And then from there, after going to school, and it was rough, I would say it was rough. It was a rough neighborhood, and I never used to go out much. I would just go to this market to buy groceries and came back home. That's it. Because I didn't want to, I used to see a lot of things going on around the area. In fact, there was someone who got killed. The back of the house was in a what do you call it? In the back of the house was what do you call that? With the house in the back. I can't think of it now. I'll remember it later. But the back of the house was a house there in the back of it, and we found out that 2 people were murdered there, and that was very, very, very shocking to me, because, as I said before, I never had that experience with any of those kinds of stuff. So to hear somebody get killed and 2 people got murdered was very traumatic for me. Because all I know is little kids fighting each other and playing around and things, but nothing where people shooting somebody and killing 2 people, and I never knew to this day what happened or whatever. So, but God protected us through it all. And as I realized too, we have to also make choices too, because I never used to go out, and after a certain time I wouldn't go anywhere. Just go to supermarkets, as I said, and that was it. Come back home. And then, of course, during the daytime, I'll just be around speaking to a neighbor who was next door, the older lady from Mississippi, American lady, and that was my only friend I really had, this lady from Mississippi, and God bless her, she was very kind and like a mother to me. Yeah. When we were in America, I remember I told you I had to leave the family member. It's a cousin of his father, my husband's father. We had to leave there because I told you how the guys were trying to whatever. I told you that situation. So when we went on our own, what happened is that because we didn't have money, I told you the visitors in the country and all that. So I remember one Christmas day, we had nothing in the house, and this man came, and when he came in the area, detective doing something, investigating something. And he came and he looked, he said hello and opened the door. And he looked, and I had baked a bread. So sometimes when you go through difficulty, God is preparing you for something down the road. Why I say so? As a young girl, I used to bake bread because my mother liked how I used to make bread. She didn't want to make bread, but she liked how I made bread. So I baked a bread. And all I had on the table was a baked bread, which is good. Some people don't have nothing. So you have a baked bread, be happy you have a baked bread. And I look back and I said, it's sometimes you go through things. If I didn't go through that way, I didn't used to want to make bread. Honestly, I did not want to make bread, but my mother didn't want to make bread because she grew up in a family where she had servants helping her. So she didn't want to do those kind of things. But I used to do it, and I tell you the truth, I was a little resentful. And at 12 years old, I had to make bread. But what I'm saying to you, when you go through stuff, God is preparing for something. Because if I didn't know how to make bread, we probably would have nothing to eat. But because I learned to make bread, even though I didn't want to, I was able to have that loaf of bread there for my son wasn't born. I have a son, the last born is my son. But I had the 2 girls there, so, and my husband and I. And so we had something to eat. So I share this with you to let you know that through the tough times, God is preparing for something where that tough time will come on to help you to save your life. Because God knows everything. He knows the beginning and the end. He sees everything in your life. And so I wanted to share that with you. While I was in Detroit, I went to, that's why I always help Salvation Army. I've always helped Salvation Army. And as I see them here in America and Canada, and they stand up in the front of a store or anything, even this last holiday here, they usually come around the holiday time, Christmas time. I always give them a donation. Because I remember when I was in America, when we didn't have any food to eat because we had to leave the house of a family member. And so, and we had 2 children, and my husband was probably we had a visitor's visa, so we could not, work. Only in summertime he would get something, because even that is mercy to God that he was even able to come. He's not supposed to as a visitor, but because he was going to school and they gave him scholarship, he was able to work. And I was able to go to the place and they would give you a little box of food. And that is what helped the family. So I've always remember, you cannot forget, always remember that. So whenever I see them, it triggers a love and a nice feeling to know that when I was at my lowest, and we had no family, no one that we know to help us, they were able to give us a basket of food. I remember going there. But also an incident now, what I recall as I'm talking to you now, sharing a testimony with you. One day when I was going to get the basket of food, or the little box of food, I just showed you this to tell you how much time God has delivered me. I think I told you enough, but I tell you that from my senior gravis and how I was dying, and they said, we're losing her, and I'm alive today. When I told you Onassis, this billionaire died from my disease, that is enough. I don't want to share nothing with you to know what God has done for me. But I had to testify. Even though I didn't want to testify, I have to. I can't keep quiet. But I have more. That's not it. I have more. While I was getting this box one time, I was going to get this basket of food, box of food. I heard something pass. Shh. And I said, what is that noise? Because remember now, I was new in the country. I never around, anything like that. So I didn't know what's going on. And I heard somebody bawling, somebody shouting, move out of the way, gunshot. I realized it's a gunshot, because I never know how gunshots, you might say this lady really is not with it, but I have never heard a gunshot. Because where I came from in the Caribbean at that time, now it's different. Oh yeah, there's gunshot all over the place. People shooting people the whole time. But at that time, I wouldn't know a sound of a gunshot. I wouldn't know what a gunshot means. I wouldn't even know. It's when the person bawl out and said, look out. And then I heard this thing go shh. I realized a gunshot. So there again, and I was so confounded that it's amazing. So I could have gotten shot. They came from behind, they were behind me at the door, and I was inside of the store. I was inside of the Salvation Army. So moving forward, my husband was able to get a job at a newspaper, because he did a degree, and they were able to give him a job there. And even that we were under a lot of fear, because they gave him a job there, but he didn't have any papers. He's just a student, and based on the student, they hired him. And we always wondered if that should be done, because we didn't know all the rules of the government at the time, and we wondered if that's a problem. But it seemed later on we found out it was a problem. But just show you how what God did, despite the rules there, God had somebody hire him as an editor. And being an editor, he was able to get some income and be able to help the family. So I want you to set before not to focus on my testimony, but to focus on how God intervenes in our life, even when we're not doing what he wants us to do. He's there for us. But if we see we are trying to help ourselves and we are trying to do what's right. And I must mention now that even if I wasn't going to church, I had certain principles that I lived by. I didn't used to do certain things, and I said I got into trouble with the family member, the men. There was 3 of them, sons that they had, and they spoiled them rotten. They had them driving big cars and having a good time. I always knew what was wrong, what was right. So I determined that I would not get involved with any one of them. And I found out from one of the sisters that this is something that they do. Family would come from the Caribbean because, of course, in a situation where you come because you're looking for a better life. In our case, we left because of the situation there with our family, my family. And as you come there, they take advantage. And I heard that other people came to stay with them, and they, had relationship with the people. So that's something they were used to doing, but they couldn't do it with me. And so I guess they got really upset. So yeah, but God has been good. And from there, as I said, he got a job and as an editor, and then life was a bit better for us. But it didn't end there. We came to Canada. We kept living there in that area, because the rent was cheap and we didn't have our documents. We still visitors. And as I said to him, he got a scholarship there to study. So the next journey was to Canada, because we and I'm showing you again how the God we serve, how he's such an awesome God. They decided, the family was so vexed with us, they decided because I would not get involved with the men. And of course they wouldn't tell the family why. Why but I told them, but I guess their word is, because they don't know that I just came to the country, and that's their sons, and that's their brother, and their father, and whatever. So anyhow, they wanted to put us, they went to immigration to get us out of the country. And even in that, I could see God's power in it. Because we did not want to go back to Trinidad because of all of the way my family was after him and after me. Because they're after him, I get it too, of course. And we couldn't go back there. We didn't think we could go back there because we figured we don't want to get back into that situation. So we didn't know what to do, but God made a way. So they wanted to send us back to the Caribbean because they wrote a letter. And why I'm saying that, I'm not accusing them. I know that. They wrote a letter because to the immigration that for us say stop to get us out. And why I know that? Because we thought that they would sponsor us and we'd be able to stay. But as they didn't get their way with me, they decided not to. And I said to you, the sons had influence. They drove these big cars and they had houses and blah, blah, blah. So anyhow, they tried to get us out of the country. They wrote a letter. And why I know that they wrote a letter, that's again, you could see God's intervention. When my husband went, they called him in. The immigration called him in. And when he went into them, they had set up a date and time. While the person was talking to him and saying, why are your family members doing that? What's going on? Why so? So he talked with my husband. And while he was talking, he said, we have to deport you. We have to deport you. And while he was talking, he left the place, which is unusual. So we know he did it on purpose. And he dropped the letter that the family wrote. Right on the ground near my husband. So he picked it up and he read it, and he see where they wrote a letter to immigration to get us out of the country. But they didn't have the way. Again, God won. That's why I said I wanted to focus on what God does, not too much on me. I'm just a vessel he used to show his love and power. And so they had us on docket. The immigration had to docket to deport us back to the Caribbean. And there was, it's just amazing, just think about it, just amazing. The job that my husband had working in the summertime, only summer, people work was doing. They heard the situation, he told them the situation. And the man there, just knew him for a few months, but he was a hard worker, and he's an educated young man, and he works hard. They said, we are going to put up the bond. I still look at it. I'm just amazed. This person doesn't even know us. He's just there for a few weeks working with someone. And this man would swear, would put a bond. You put up a bond, you have to put up money. And this person could take off and leave. And you're in trouble because of that money you put down. And the fact that he was willing to do that still amazes me. And so he put a bond up so that we do not have to be deported back to the Caribbean. And from that, what happened after that is that we didn't, of course, we didn't want to stay there anymore. We didn't want to try to get papers and all that because we had nobody to really sponsor us or anything. So we decided to leave, and it did a bitter taste in our mouth too. So we thought of Canada, because Canada is near the US. And so my husband looked in the newspaper because we didn't have anybody in Canada. We had no family here. So he looked in the newspaper, and he found a company here. It was a company in Canada, and it was a black newspaper, the only one that was there. I don't know if it's still in business. And he called them. We didn't know who they were. We didn't even know it was a black newspaper. We just called because a newspaper, whatever met his hand. And we know now it wasn't by accident. It was by divine intervention. And he called them. Listen to me. He called and asked them to give him a job. No, not even a resident in America. Never came to Canada. Have nobody family here, and we just asked them that we want him to sponsor us. He wanted to write a letter to the government telling them that the immigration that they will hire him. He said, no problem. Imagine that. Don't know us. He said, I will write a letter because you can't come to Canada so without anything and you have no family. He said, I will hire him as a journalist because he had studied at an university. And the person wrote a letter to the immigration in America, in Canada, and told them that he will sponsor him. He can come to Canada. He will sponsor him, and he will give him this job. And that's how we came to Canada. It wasn't something that we chose to come to Canada. That's how we came. But God had a plan, and His plan always comes true. And so that's how we came to Canada. With my husband and I came with my daughter. One of them I think was 5, and one was maybe I think 6 or 7. And we came to Canada. And he got this job at this newspaper. So we were able to come because he had a French background. He knew French fluently, and because of his education, they give him an independent. That alone is also amazing. That's not just showing you. Just focus on what God could do in situations that we can find ourselves in. The Canadian government give him papers to come to Canada. We had no family because most people I found out after always have some relatives in Canada for them to be able to come to Canada. But they call us independent immigrants. I didn't know what they meant at the time. Because it was based, afterwards I realized that. Because at that time you're not worrying about what is independent or what it's called. Who cares about the name? You just want to be able to get some place where you could live a life and have 2 children that need your care and need care. So the tourist was based on his education, it's based on the fact he could speak French, and Canada is a French country too, England and French country, and so we came to Canada as an independent, and he worked with the newspaper as an editor in Toronto. He worked as a newspaper there, and that's when we were able to start life there. And I must mention too that it's important when you're in a situation too that you have to do the works. You cannot depend on God alone. You have to do works because he wasn't making much money, little money as a summer student, but we lived in a total for $50, but a little place of 1 room and a kitchen. And so with two children, and 4 of us. And what happened is that we were able to save because we did not spend. As I said, I didn't go no place anyway. We didn't go nowhere. So we were able to save up a little bit of money to come to Canada. We had a few thousand saved up from just being a student and working sometime. And so we had to make sacrifices, just not expect God to do things for us when we're not willing to do anything for ourselves. And so we were able to show the government that we had this money. It was a few $1,000s to the government. And that also helped us plus the education and all that and the French language. Also, just looking back now, while we were there, remember we had nobody in Canada. We had no family, nobody to even give us a place to stay. So we called from America, Detroit, and we called, look at the newspaper again. And when we look at the newspaper, we were looking for a place, and we didn't know where it was because we don't know Toronto, we don't know the town, we still the name of the town, we don't know where they are. So we just call anybody that have a place to rent that we could pay the price that we're looking for. And so we called somebody, and this person told us that they have a place that they could rent us. We never saw the place, we don't know where the place, if the place even existed, because we wasn't able to come to look at the place, because we weren't allowed to come just like that into the country. So we were able to get the place by phone, and then we came in to Canada. That's how we came into Canada. And so that's where another journey began now. From the Caribbean to the US, and then now the US into Canada. And so we came and we set a place there, and we were very grateful we had a place to stay because we had nowhere to stay. And even that was a challenge too, because when we would buy groceries, because the place we rented, we couldn't see the place, so we don't know what we're getting. So when we went there, we see it was a room upstairs to where the people live, and it wasn't really secured. So when we buy our little groceries, they would come. I don't know who in the home will do it. I can't say, I can't accuse anybody, but they were in the house. Somebody in the house would go up there in the room and take our groceries. So, but we didn't make it bother us because the situation we were in was worse. So we're glad we were able to come away from America, not have to be sent back to the Caribbean, not be put in bond. They put you in some place where they keep you until they send you back to your country, wherever they keep you. I don't know if it was some holding place or whatever. And so that would have been worse because we have never been in any trouble with the law. We never even go to the court. We never went to court. So we wouldn't even know how to exist in that situation. So yes, so we came here, and then from there, within a few, God is so good. We came to Canada, and within 3 to 4 weeks, I will be lying to tell you exactly, but I know it was a couple of weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, we bought a home. That again is another miracle. Why? Because we didn't go any place. And the little money my husband made, we put it away in the bank. So we were able to show immigration, and that money we use to pay on a house. Why? Because we live in there, and we said, no, we can't live there with people taking things from us and stealing from us. So we went looking for a place. So sometimes hardship makes you do things that we know. Maybe we would have never bought a house if we had family to live by. We would be comfortable with them. Or maybe the people didn't go and take our food that we buy, groceries that we buy. We probably would have not made an effort. But because of that situation was uncomfortable, it forced us to do something. And so we were able to have our first house. It was amazing. And we just come here after that situation in America, going through that, and come to Canada and was able to buy a house. But that time, Canada house was $25,000. Now those homes on the beaches are now over $2 million. Our agent just told me that and told me. We paid $25,000 for it, and we paid them, I can't remember, but we paid them for $2,000 and that was a lot of money, and $25,000, maybe $2,000-3,000. I wouldn't tell you because I can't remember what we paid them, but it was $25,000. And there we were able to have a house for myself, my husband, and the 2 children. And what was amazing, that I was looking for a job to work because my husband was very educated. And when he came to Canada, they're saying that he was too educated to get the job he was applying for, because they say he will not stay in this job. They tell him he will not stay in this job because he's too, and he said, I don't care, I just want a job. I don't care if I'm too educated, I want the work. But they tell him no, they refuse to give him the work even though he wanted, because they say he wouldn't stay in the job. So then I didn't have much education, so I went to university in America, but it wasn't finished. And so what I did is I went looking for a job. So I said, okay, he's too educated, I'm not too educated. I just had a year or so university, or a year and a half. I said, I'll go looking for a job. So I went looking for a job and applied to a job. I first was working in a factory, doing factory work, and I couldn't handle it because I had to put things on this, I don't know what you call this thing that you had to make transitions, little transition things for TV. That not TV, probably for TV. They had TV that time, not like the TVs now. So they were making a transition things for the TV, and you had to work. What you had to do is that it was passing fast, and you had to pack it, and I was jumping so trying to get it into the box before it go down the line. And I said, you know what? I can't take that. So I woke up with, I said, no, that's not for me. I can't be run up and down like that. No. So I said, well, I have to do something with it. So I went to a place called Bell Canada. It's a telephone company in Canada. And I applied for a job. It was an operator service. That time they used to have these keyboard. They used to have these system where, not like they have now, where you plug in to the wall, and you call Germany, you call France, you call England, Caribbean, wherever, and that's the kind of system they had. They didn't have the kind of computer system they have now. So it was operator service. People call you, dial 0, and they dial 0, they'll get you. And if they want to make a call overseas, or they want just to ask information, they'll call 0. That's what they used to call it. They don't have it anymore. They'll call 0, and then you'll answer it and give them whatever service they're looking for. So I applied, but I didn't even know what operator service meant. I just applied because I was looking for work. So when I went for the interview, the man said to me, my name is Mr. Gold, Mr. What is his name again? His name, Whitehead, sorry, yeah, because here was Whitehead. And he said to me, when he interviewed me, he said to me, you sure you could work here night shift? Because it's night shift, because my kids were young, so I couldn't really work in the day. So, because my husband was doing a little part-time job in teaching, so I said, okay, I'll be home with them in the day, and in the night now, you'll take, and I'll go and work the shift work. We would call it shift work. We used to work night shift, different shifts, operator service. So I applied, I said to you, and he said to me, you sure you can do this job? Because you have 2 young children. So he said, I don't think you could handle this with 2 young kids working night shift, and you need to take care of the kids and so forth. As he said, how you know that you can do this job? Well, at the time I was so naive, in the 20s, but I was a 26-year-old woman, but I was like a 15-year-old, 14-year-old kid. Because as a city, I didn't have much exposure growing up as a kid. I grew up very sheltered. Sheltered because of the faith my parents were sent Adventist, and sheltered because of the community they live in a more rural area. So very sheltered. I just was able to play with friends that they side. I couldn't play with anybody in the neighborhood. Even some neighbors I wasn't allowed to play with. And as a young girl. But now as I grew up, not wrong, but I found out after why they didn't want me to play with certain children, because they knew things that I didn't know as a parent. But I used to be upset with them, wondering why are they preventing me from talking to kids I went to school with, and I thought they weren't fair to me. So I was not to please with my parents. I said, why won't they? And they didn't, at those days, they didn't tell you why not to. Now I'll tell my kids why. My kids will know. Maybe 2 months will know. But at that time, they will not, and the culture, they would not tell you why. They just tell you not to talk with somebody, not to play with them, but you don't know why. So anyhow, as I was saying now, going back to the situation, now not going back off track a little bit. We're in Canada, and we had this home. I went to the, as I said, I went to the interview. He told me go home and think about it, and he will think about it. So I didn't get it, and when I said you cannot apply 2 weeks. He said you cannot apply again. If you don't get the job, you cannot apply for 6 months. Sorry, I'm lying to you. Sorry, it's not Mr. Whitehead. He's the one that hired me. It's somebody else I saw before. Sorry, I correct him. Somebody I saw before, and I didn't get the job, and so I didn't wait for 6 months because I had to get a job because I have 2 young kids to support, and my husband is saying he's too educated. The job that he applied for, they're telling him that he would not, he wouldn't stay. They wouldn't give him a chance to take the job. They said no, he wouldn't stay in the job. So I realized I had to work. So as I said to you, they said no at the first time, and I went back in 2 weeks. And I'm telling you, as a person who a young woman who at the age of 19, have 2 young kids and a stay-home mom, I was a little nervous because I had no experience out there. I'm very nervous to go back to apply. When they said on the form that you cannot apply within 6 months, I guess that was the rule of the Human Resource Department. But I had a need, and it shows you that God will help you, but you cannot sit back. God will help us. It's the same God help those who help themselves, and I could prove it to you. I said, no, I needed this job for my kids. My kids, I have to pay my children. So, and then we had a place we bought, a house we bought in that area, in the beaches area. So I went back in 2 weeks. And I was very, very nervous because I figured at the time I didn't know, now I know, and good thing I didn't know, that they would have known I came back. I was so naive and foolish, I thought that I could fool them and just come back again. They wouldn't know that I came before. But now looking back, as I'm here for all these years in Canada, I realized that they will know. Just have to look in the file and see who applied before. But thank God I didn't know I was naive, and that my naivety helped me. So anyhow, I went back in 2 weeks, but I was quite nervous, wondering if they will know I came before, and I'm coming back in 2 weeks. But now this is the correct part. The one that interviewed me this time, his name was Mr. Whitehead. I never forget the name because his hair was white. And he's the one who told me, when I told him, he asked me, how you know you'll do this job? You have 2 young kids, so forth, so forth. I said, I'll do it. He said to me, why do you think you're suitable for this job? I gave him a very naive answer. I said, you could have a nice voice. Look back at it. I said, what? To myself, I look back after, years after. I said, what kind of thing you give this man? I said, I have a nice voice and I could talk with people. And I wondered, I said, this man would be wondering, what is this young woman saying? But anyhow, I was called. And I got the job, offered the service, working night shifts. And I started to work in the job. And when I was there for 3-4 days in the job after training and so forth, people asked me, who hired you? I'm just showing you that there's no doubt that God intervened. They asked me, who hired you? I just said Whitehead because that's the person who hired me. But they, of course, they're there, so they know him. They're workers in the company. They said, Mr. Whitehead hired you? I said, yes, Mr. Whitehead. He don't hire people like that. I said, well, he hired me. So I'm showing you that my perseverance and persistence, coupled with the power of God, worked. Because I could have go back and say, you know what? I'll wait for 6 months. And who knows what would happen in 6 months without money to pay the money. I wouldn't be able to pay the house, money to feed the children. But I said no. I'm going back. And of course, God did that. He allowed this man. So that's why I know it's a miracle. They were shocked, the people there. And so and to let you know, I worked there for Bell for years. And I just retired a while ago with Bell after 30 years service in Bell. Never left Bell. And I must mention to you at this point that I was planning just to work for a month. That's what I thought. I said I'll work for a month until my husband gets a job, because he had the education I didn't have. And when he gets a job, I will be able to take care of my kids. I could, just to help out until he gets home. Well, 30 years after, I was at Bell. And as I said to you, I retired at Bell, and I have no regret, because it's one of the best companies. For me, I have no problem with Bell Canada. I was very grateful. And when I retired early, and later in the video you'll know why I had to leave Bell early, because of the sickness I had, and to show you the power of God again in my life. So I had to retire because of the sickness, and I have always been grateful to Bell, partly because you have to have a good attitude in these jobs. When you're working, there's all difficult people that you will meet that will give you problems, but it's your attitude towards them and what you do that make the difference. So later in my video, I will tell you the next step after how I got sick and how God delivered me. I'm not supposed to be talking to you today, 2024. Today, I believe today is July, maybe? July the 31st, I was not supposed to be here. That's another miracle. So I'm trying to show you, don't focus on me too much. Focus on the power of God, and that you can never be in any situation that God cannot get you out of. Nothing. Know where we are now and whatever you're going through, God can deliver you. And so that this is my part of my testimony, and as I said, you'll hear further now what happened, why I had to leave Bell earlier than I planned. But it's all good because it turned out all good in the end.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've been blessed by Lorna's experience, as we have also. Please join us next week so that we can see chapter 2 of her testimony. God bless.